I am clean, I am fairly well fed, and I'm on my way out of town just as soon as I stop to get food at the IGA. So, slight chance of rain, huh? Uh-huh. Okay, resupply time. How can you tell my fellow hikers have been here? The north sides are pretty much cleaned out. Fun times. Okay, resupply is complete. That nice gentleman over there basically saw me repackaging things at the store and offered me a ride before I even had to put my thumbs up, so that's cool. It is both sunny and hot and threatening rain, so everything's going to be soaking pretty quick here. And I am just feeling in much better spirits after a shower. I was so happy when I got into that hotel room. Ridiculously expensive, but totally worth it just due to the timing. Next up is the Sterling Inn, which should be about 4 days away, hopefully. I'm still struggling adjusting back to having to do solo food versus paired food, so we'll see how I do this. Also, they had hiker wine, so my pack's a little on the heavier side, but that's okay. Just about 7 hours of hiking today. So from here, my plan is about a 70-mile carry to Sterling Inn, which I have a couple of little replacement things like gaiters and whatnot Taters is sending me. And then after that, I'll hike to Monson, which I believe is right before the 100-mile wilderness. Then that's going to be like a 5-6 day carry through the 100-mile wilderness. And then that brings me to Able Bridge, which I believe is where I can pick up food for Katahdin. Now, of course, since I'm going up and over Katahdin, I'm going to have to carry a little more weight. Since once I get down the far side, you know, I still have some miles to do before the first resupply. So that'll be unpleasant, I'm sure. Rangeley worked out really well. I was able to basically get everything on my hit list. I needed, you know, a new filter, a replacement stuff sack for my poop bag, and some medication topped up. Was able to get all of that. The store was fairly well stocked. The only thing is some of the things like north sides were a little bit picked over. So I had to go with the ye old standby. Lots and lots of cheddar broccoli. So right now it is Saturday, August 21st. Still hoping Katahdin, you know, end of August, early September. Don't really know what the train's going to do, so I'm not going to stress about it too much as far as when I'm going to hit the end. The other thing in the short term is, of course, there is a hurricane / tropical storm / whatever that looks like it's going to hit this area. First landfall of a hurricane up here in 30 years. I just have all sorts of luck, don't I? Fires, floods, tornadoes, and storms. I knew I shouldn't have dug that cat hole in that Indian burial ground, huh? So I am watching the weather, but for the moment, I'm not really taking any special precautions because it's showing rain, but when is it not showing rain out here? You know, I can't not hike just because it's supposed to get a little wet. If it does look like it's going to storm hard, then I'll reevaluate and I might just hunker in the tent or see about getting off trail. There is an alpine zone up ahead, so thunder and lightning is kind of the biggest concern. I can hike all day in rain. I don't like it, but I can do it. But I don't want any more close calls like Connecticut. Also, I talked to Taters last night and this morning, and she was just so over the moon to be back in school. When the COVID lockdown hit and they announced that school was going into emergency remote learning, there was actually cheering from the students when that announcement came. Now, after everybody being stuck home for so long, all the students are super happy to be back in class. And, you know, you don't generally become a teacher because you want to teach over Zoom meetings. Jen and her co-workers were really struggling over not being able to do, you know, the in-person actual, you know, teaching, which I get. It's the same with my wilderness and mountaineering class. Even the parts we could do over Zoom, it just doesn't give me that, you know, special joy that interacting with people one-on-one does. I should say interacting in person, not necessarily one-on-one. I actually had 1 or 2 people try and get me to do a talk about my experience on the PCT, you know, since it was the COVID year. They figured that was kind of different. But I put them off on account of I wasn't really home long enough to do something like that. And also, it's just more fun to give a talk like that in front of a group. You know, you can kind of interact with people and play off people versus just staring at a computer screen. A big part of me did really want to take a zero at that last town, but you know, it just burns so much money, especially in a place like that that's basically a resort town that's expensive. And I don't really have much point in doing a on-trail zero, since that just limits me in other ways. But that's okay. I generally try and minimize zeros just because of, you know, the cost and the time factor. I've run into so many people out here who seemed like they were not on any time schedule at all, hitting every hostel, taking zeros left and right, and suddenly they seem to have disappeared somewhere back there. Similar things did happen on the PCT last year. People in the desert section seemed like they didn't, have any schedule whatsoever. And then all of a sudden in Northern California, people started doing math and they're like, oh, we've got to speed up. And then it became, oh, well, that's okay, because we're going to do Oregon in 2 weeks, which is a miserable way to do Oregon, by the way, which then turned into people skipping ahead. So all of a sudden, people I hadn't seen for a long, long time showed up in Washington going, yeah, we skipped ahead a couple hundred miles. We're going to go back and do it afterwards, which in most cases, I don't think they did. Versus, of course, I'm one of those weird neurotic people where, you know, day one leaving Campo, day one leaving Key West, I felt like there was a schedule. Less on the Key West section, but certainly once I hit Springer, it's like, oh no, time counts. You know, winter's coming. So I've come across a number of these where they ask you to register. Well, I guess things aren't going to be quite flat from here. Still no moose, sadly. Okay, so the weather looks to be turning a bit iffy. It's been drizzling off and on, and looks like there may be thunder off in the distance. And there is an alpine zone ahead. Okay, I get adding the rebar in some places, but this one seems a bit much. Yeehaw. Fun times. Welcome to Saddleback. And on top of this glorious fog and wetness, my stomach is really not happy from town food. Great timing. Well, this is fun. Okay, so not the best day. I've been having some bad diarrhea and related symptoms on the climb out of town. That made that kind of rough, and I've been dragging. Just got up here, got some water, had my tent out, and all hell just broke loose rain-wise, so everything in here is pretty damn wet. Not the best day. Okay, just sitting here making coffee, trying to remember what it was like being like clean and dry yesterday, you know. So yesterday, climbing over the hills, Saddleback and Horn, well, 4K hills, you know, I was really having bad intestinal issues, which is hard when you're in an alpine zone. You have to like run and try and find places. And then I got to the campsite on the far side, and I just went back, got water, was sitting there, started raining, came back, just got my tent out ready to set up. I wasn't even going to screw with trying to like leave the campsite. I was fine staying here close to a bathroom and everything. And then just all hell broke loose, and there was nothing I could do. I was partway through setting up the tent, just had to try and hurry, and so things got pretty wet in here. Once the tent's up, it really keeps the rain out well, but, you know, up until that, the problem is it kind of collects. So once I got into the tent, I basically got into, you know, as much dry stuff as I could. Couldn't even unpack my sleeping bag or anything for a while until I was able to kind of manage stuff. Drank my hiker wine, which did improve my spirits a little bit. And I had to force myself to eat at that point because I didn't even want to screw with having to, you know, like cook right outside like that. But eventually did, went to bed a little happier, and yeah, now it's raining, of course. So I can't do my normal Weather Channel app forecast, which has been the only reliable thing. The radar seems to work pretty well. I did get a forecast off my InReach just to see, but you know, it shows rain for the next couple of days, possibly heavy this afternoon. Good news is there's no alpine zone. Bad news is, yeah, I get to be out in the rain, and I'm already really wet. I started out in the sun, but I was sweating so much I was basically soaked. Had to go back just hiking in my underwear because those Patagonia shorts just get soaking wet. They don't really deal with evaporation real well, especially out here where everything's so humid. And now I'm going to be starting with everything soaked. Also, I'm kind of running on the danger zone here with intestinal issues because I only have one pair of functional hiker underwear. The other two busted. And my spares don't arrive for another like 60 miles at Sterling End, so anything happens to those. If you're not aware, there's a running joke about through hiking that you're going to shit yourself at least once during the hike. And you got to love those jokes that kind of cause people to get that haunted look like, oh yeah, I remember that day. Through hiking, everybody, living the dream. Okay, bit of a late start. Combination of waiting to make sure whatever was up with my stomach yesterday had run its course, and just having not the best time. But I am moving. All I have to do is make it to Sterling in about 60 miles, and then I can clean up again. Unfortunately, between me and that is probably Hurricane Henry or Tropical Storm Henry or whatever it's called. So, do you know how you tell the difference between northbounders and southbounders in this area? The northbounders are muttering about F this trail, so sick of the rain. The southbounders tend to have a little more spring to their steps still, having just only gone about 200 miles and done a couple of mountains, but they have no idea what they're in for. So yeah, this is the sort of thing that's going on this morning still. So when I'm not on one of the peaks and when it's relatively flat, the going's pretty good at the moment. Rain's died off and I'm mostly protected from the wind. Problem is just slick rocks and roots. There's a lot of these up climbs and down climbs that get a little hairy. I came close to slipping on the last one, which that would have really hurt. Yeah, typical. Yay, free boat. Oy. Yet another lovely AT mountain with spectacular views. Six o'clock, and if you can believe it, the biggest thing I need is once again water. Because while everything is soaking wet, there's nothing collectible. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I managed to find water and I managed to find a spot that just barely fits my tent, so I'm gonna duck down. Yeah, it's kind of nasty out here. Oh well, home sweet home for the night.